You're listening to The Phillip Jordan Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the Phillip Jordan Show. This is Weekend Observations. I am your host, Phillip Jordan, from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm an in-studio host and producer. Dothan was football. What is Weekend Observations, you may ask? Something new we're doing, testing out during football season here on the show every single Monday around this time. Me and Brendan Eisenman will go live for about 30 minutes to talk about what we saw over the weekend. We'll be college football heavy, but we may jump to some NFL stuff and some other sports stuff going, at least during the football season. And as I said, Brendan Eisenman, longtime friend, he's been a guest many times on whatever podcast I'm doing. Call him the Monday co-host. You can check him out over at the SoFlo Bulls. But Brandon, we were supposed to do this last week. My fault. Thanks. I didn't do any podcast last week, but excited for Weekend Observations, man.
Yeah, I am too. Listen, Phillip, I'm glad to be doing this with you every week. I'll definitely give you a pass for last week. I almost didn't do a pod last week either. Look, I know things come up in life. It happens. But look, we're back. Week 2 is over. New AP poll rankings, and week 3 is upon us. Let's get to it.
And for the live audience, or if you're coming in checking the video on the replay, leave a comment. We'll get to it here. If it's not during the live show, I will try to get to it throughout the week because we've got a couple shows going to be coming to you around this time this week. So it's going to be a lot of fun stuff. Try to do around 6, but things happen. May have to go a little bit beyond now. But like I said, be 30 minutes of worth your time here on the show. And it was an interesting college football weekend again. We're going to jump in. Have you guys see the title of the episode? It says it's Texas back in parentheses again. But you know, I want to be a good host here, and the guest co-host or the co-host. Brandon, where do you want to jump off at? That's how we're going to do this. I'm always going to let Brandon, he's the visitor, kind of pick up where we jump off. Where do you want to jump off at with the weekend?
You know what? I think I don't want to jump with Texas first. You know what? I say we jump with what is still somehow in week 2 going into week 3 and how they're hosting College Game Day. I don't know. The national talk that has been since week 1, and that is the Colorado Buffaloes. They did it again. Not as prevalent as the first week. They didn't put up, big numbers. Sugar Sanders didn't have, 400 or 500 passing yards against Nebraska, but they got it done. And look, I think going into, say, week 4, week 5, when Colorado starts playing Oregon and USC, I think they'll be the talk of college football up until then, because they play Colorado State in week 3 and they're hosting College Game Day. Not even a good enough matchup to host College Game Day, but whatever. But I think until they start playing top 15, top 10, top 5 caliber teams like Oregon and USC and Washington later on in the year, that they're going to be the talk of college football for one reason, because they have Deion Sanders. So let's just start there. Look, good win for Colorado. I picked them to beat Nebraska. I'm not very high on Nebraska. I haven't been for a long time. Nebraska hasn't been back since, it's been a while. I mean, since way before Texas was, back in 2009 when they lost to Bama in the title game. But, for Colorado, look, Phillip, I think this is a good thing for that program because they've struggled a lot over the years, and now they've got a head coach and a team that is buying into what Deion is saying and how he's trying to conduct things there with that program, and it's paying off. Now, can it pay off, through the rest of the season? Who knows? But I like what Colorado is doing right now.
Look, and we were texting about what we're going to talk about here, and I did make a little statement about Colorado on X or Twitter, the former Bird app, on Saturday. And look, they've created excitement. They've played well. They got 2 potential Heisman Trophy candidates on this team. But you have just beat TCU and Nebraska. And before everybody jumps at me and says, well, Phillip, TCU was in the national championship game last year. This is not the same TCU team. This is a rebuilt team. And Colorado didn't necessarily slow them down any in that game. And Nebraska's rebuilding. Jeff Sims at quarterback. I think Matt Rule will get them headed in a better direction. But I also need to say this about Nebraska. Nebraska fans need to – one day they just got to have to finally realize this. You're never going to be what you were in the 90s. That dominant team. At best, you can be a 9-3 team, maybe occasionally compete for a college football playoff spot, especially now it's going to 12. But you're never going to be what you once were. Just like Tennessee's never going to be what they once were either. But my thing with Colorado is this. They're playing well. And they struggled a little bit early against Nebraska. They picked things up. You know what I'm getting tired of? Is Deion Sanders going to find somehow, some way every team disrespected them every week? Is this going to be the stick I'm going to have to put up with every single week with Colorado? Because I'll be honest with you, 2 weeks in, it's old. I'm like, yeah, people disrespected you. People didn't think you was going to be good. Brendan, remind me, how many games did Colorado win last year?
Without going and looking, Phillip, I don't know.
It was like 1, right?
1 or 2 sounds about right. Maybe 3.
So you were bad. And then you have 86 new players. I mean, we've never seen that before. Yeah, we've seen teams load up with the portal and add new players, but not to that level. And, hey, you've done a great job so far building the roster up, rebuilding, and what you put on the field is a very entertaining product. But at the same time, come on now. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on Colorado. When Colorado plays teams, legitimate teams in the Pac-12, how are they going to do? Without their schedule in front of me, how are they going to do against Oregon? How are they going to do against Utah? How are they going to do against USC, UCLA? Those kind of teams that have the offensive firepower to go up against them. I'm just saying 7-5 is a really good year for this team if that's what they have. I think that's what they're going to be. I want to see how Deion and this team responds to a loss. I don't know. I think everybody wants this to work because of Deion. And Deion's great. I think he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong. But I just feel like we need to pump the brakes on this situation.
I think a lot of people are feeling that way because it's become such a big topic and people are tired of hearing about it. And especially the disrespect part that's been, brought up the last 2 weeks. TCU, yeah, they may have been disrespecting you. Or you beat them. Okay, that's the end of that. Nebraska, same thing. If this goes on for the entire season, that's going to be the narrative surrounding this program is that they were disrespected all season and still only won, 7 or 8 games. Now, I think for a couple of different reasons, Colorado can compete in the Pac-12. Here's why. Utah, out of what I've seen the first 2 games, without Cam Rising, I don't think they have the offensive firepower to beat Colorado. They definitely didn't show it against Baylor on Saturday. USC, they've got the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. I'll give the edge to SC there. Oregon, I think that's a toss-up. Oregon struggled with Texas Tech, who got beat in double overtime against Wyoming in week 1. So there's teams that need to figure this out before they play Colorado. And with Colorado having Shedeur Sanders and a guy like Travis Hunter that can play both sides of the ball, which, by the way, he wouldn't be able to do in the SEC. I'm just going to throw that out there. That would not be happening. He would have to pick a side, either offense or defense. With Sanders and Hunter, I think Colorado can compete. And look, all respect to Deion, I think he's a great coach. But, another thing that comes to mind, Phillip, is with the way that he basically told all of those current players at Colorado when they were still there, when he got hired, that basically, hey, I'm kicking you out and bringing in my own guys. And he's, had success so far with it. If he can keep that up throughout the remainder of this season, I wonder if that will have kind of a trickle effect around college football to where coaches are like, hey, Deion can make it work. Why can't we make it work? Kick out some of our players, go get whoever we want. and then we can be just as good.
Well, and I think, and this has been said too, I do believe that Dion is saying a lot of things that coaches do say, but he's just doing it in front of a camera. And that's a big thing. All right, so we got a little help by Rhett Baxley. He has got some of the schedule here for us. Colorado State, then at Oregon, followed by USC at home, at Arizona State, Stanford at UCLA, Oregon State, Arizona, at Washington State, at Utah. So I'm going to go ahead, and then we're going to move off of this topic. We didn't mean to go, 11, 12 minutes.
On Colorado.
We still got to get to Alabama, Texas. That's the meat of our conversation. So I'll go say this. I think they lose at Oregon. I think they lose to USC. I think they lose to UCLA. Oregon State's going to be tough. Oregon State's good. And at Utah, at Washington State's a tough one. I mean, you got to go there. That's not an easy place to play. And you play at Utah. And I feel like by that time, Cam Rising will be back. So I see 7-5. That's what I see out of this team.
10-2. They'll lose to SC at home and at Washington State. Started out there.
Okay, before we get in a virtual fight, let's move on. Let's move things along. Let's go to the state of Alabama where we are at and what everybody's talked about. Texas beating Alabama 34-24. So slight little plug, since I didn't do this podcast any last week. Now, I do have another one I do called the Wiregrass Daily News Sports. I did predict Texas to win this game. I just want to let everybody know that. I actually went 3-0 on in-state picks. I picked Kansas State, I picked Auburn, and I picked Texas. I'll tell you what, though. Watching that game, and everybody you've seen talk about it, Alabama fans mostly, has wanted – a lot of them have wanted to blame – not all. A lot of them, though, have wanted to blame Jalen Milroe. His 2 interceptions were horrible. He didn't read the defense correctly. Bad plays on him. But he's not the only reason why Alabama lost against Texas. They could not protect Milroe. Let's be honest. If that was Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner, they would have got sacked a whole lot more than Jalen Milroe because Milroe can escape that. And another thing, I didn't really see a lot out of the Alabama running game. I thought Alabama was going to be more focused on that. The receivers need to step up for Alabama. There's not a receiver on that team that really is going to fear. Now, that catch by Jermaine Burton in the end zone, that was a great throw by Milroe. Terrific throw. Can't have an arm. I mean, he's got all the tools, just needs experience. But defensively, Brandon, they did not get any pressure on Quinn Ewers. And then, look, all this talk about Kool-Aid McKinstry being one of the best corners in college football, he got burned a couple times. And this whole Alabama secondary got burned. So when I look at it, it's not just Jalen Milroe. It's the whole Alabama team. This was a team loss. And for Texas, man, they got players. And if Quinn Ewers is going to play out this year, this team definitely is going to win the Big 12. And I think they're a playoff team.
Yeah, I picked Texas to win when we did our picks last Thursday on the 6th Year podcast. And it's not because, I don't like Alabama or anything like that. I just going in, I thought Texas had the better team, the more explosive players especially on the offensive side, especially at wide receiver. And I kind of figured that going into the game, Ewers would end up being the better quarterback, and he was, obviously. Look, Bama, I don't know what's going on, but they have a ton of issues. It's not just, like you said, it's not just Milroe. It's the low snaps. It's the running game not being effective. Receivers, not making plays. I forget which quarter it was in. Maybe it was in the second half. There was a play where Milroe, I believe, went down the right sideline to, I think it was Jason McClellan, or maybe it was Jermaine Burton, one of the two. And he should have dove for the catch, and he didn't. So that wasn't bad on Milroe. That was the receiver's fault. And then defensively, they were just getting burnt. Like, Bama's DBs in coverage are not good at all. And if they're going to play like that, especially on the defensive side of the ball against Tennessee, against LSU, against Ole Miss, they're going to have trouble. and they may have more than 2 losses if they continue to play that way. I think Saban and the coaching staff need to do something, and they've got to do it quick. I know they've got a little quote-unquote easy game at South Florida this weekend in Tampa. I'll be there for that one. But, man, when they get into the meat of this conference schedule, if they don't fix it, they're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, they are. Look, you've got matchups with LSU and Tennessee, which before the season I talked about, a lot of people talked about that, okay, these teams are going to have to go to Tuscaloosa. Texas has proved that's not that big of a deal, especially if your quarterback is on point. Look, Alabama is still capable and talented enough where they could run through the table and get to Atlanta and beat Georgia, go to the playoff. We know that. It's Alabama's lost games before in the season, and then it's always hard a lot of times for them to get that second loss. But they've got some holes they got to fix on this team. And just looking at this in the game, and like I said, I wanted to see more out of the Alabama run game. Jace McKellen had 45 yards. Milroe had 44, so second leading rusher. You had Rodell Williams with six attempts in 12 yards. Jam Miller only had 6 yards. I know a lot of that was the Texas front because you got to give, as much as we want to focus on what Alabama did wrong, we got to give also credit where it's due with what Texas did defensively. Texas, Brandon, they're ready to be in the SEC. There's no doubt about it. They look like an SEC outfit. So it's going to be tough for Alabama. Of course, you'll get to see them up close and personal. So we'll be talking about that next week when they do travel down to South Florida. Because not only are you going to be there, Brandon, if it's okay, I share here that you're going to be your media credentialed with SoFlo Bulls. So it's going to be a cool experience for you.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I believe I get field access pregame up until 5 minutes till kickoff, and then 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And then obviously media availability for the press conference and stuff after. I've never been to Tampa. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know it's probably going to be a very dominated game by Alabama because, number one, South Florida doesn't put up a lot of numbers. They only beat Florida A&M 38-24 last weekend. They should have beat them by at least 20. But Bama is also going to be off because they lost to Texas. So, I mean, if this game's 52-7 at halftime, I wouldn't be surprised at all because Nick Saban is going to have that team fired up, I think. And you know what, Phillip? I think week 3 might be the time to throw in one of the backups, either Simpson or Buckner, or both, if Bama's, up by a definitive margin going into the midway through the third or the fourth quarter. I think we'll see Bama turn it around because, like I said, they are going to be ticked off. And they've got a lot to work on, but this is where they start working on it. And what other better week to do it than playing a group of 5 team on the road?
Yeah, well, after the game, Saban even talked about there may be in a part where he was thinking about going to another quarterback, but then Milroe throws a touchdown pass to Burton, and it's kind of like, okay, we got to ride with it. So let's go to the game that was after that. Late night football. I stayed up for it. I regret every moment of it during the game while I was watching it.
Me too.
Well, at least you were watching UFC at the same time, so at least you kind of had it going for me. I mean, to me, it was pretty much just straightly locked into Auburn and Cal. And we'll talk about this game a little bit more tomorrow evening with Taylor Jones from the Auburn Wire. But the Auburn should have lost this game. I'm just going to be up front. Cal left a lot of points on the board. 3 missed field goals. You had the field goal toward the end of the first half that got brought back because of a hold. Then you're pushed back further where you can't keep the field goal. That should have been a touchdown to start off the game. The defender from Cal was not out of bounds. That should have been a touchdown. So that's more points. But also get credit to the Auburn defense. They did what they had to. They held back. They held Cal out of the end zone. They made plays and they had to, but the offense was horrible. 4 turnovers, you can't have that. So it's one of the things now locally for Auburn. They do play Sanford this weekend. So it's like, okay, before they jump into SEC play and play Texas A&M, who we're going to talk about here in a second. But yeah, Auburn's got stuff to clean up. Me and you have talked about this. I do not like the quarterback thing they're doing. I believe in getting Robbie Ashford in the game from time to time, but the constant switching of quarterbacks in middle of drives, I don't care for. Peyton Thorne cannot get in a rhythm doing that. So I think that's some stuff I hope Hugh Freeze will look at this week, but it's going to be interesting what happens, what they do going forward.
Yeah, Phillip, I kind of regret staying up and watching that too. Actually, the UFC was over before midnight, which doesn't happen a lot. So I was still watching Auburn and Cal. And honestly, I kind of just wanted to turn it off. I'm not even going to lie. Cal couldn't run the ball. Auburn really couldn't do much. I'm like, this is just a defensive game that is never going to end, it seems like. Like, Cal left so many points on the board, and obviously that's got to hurt. Like, going back and watching film, like the missed kicks, the calls back. I mean, Cal should have won that game. But credit to Auburn, man, for keeping Cal out of the end zone on numerous occasions in that game, actually. But I will say one thing, Phillip. I know that you're not a big guy on switching of the quarterbacks in middle of drives with Auburn. But red zone Robbie is a good thing. I mean, if you're, obviously you want to get your starter, the reps and get him, the time in there in the game. But I think what Hugh Freeze and that coaching staff are doing is they're trying to utilize both guys so that really there's no tension there. And even if that wasn't the case, utilizing Robbie Ashford in the red zone, I like it. I really do. It does take away from, Peyton Thorne's opportunity to, put up numbers and stuff, especially in the red zone. But if you're close to the goal line, just put Robbie in and let him run it in, man. It's going to happen. Correct me if I'm wrong, Phillip. I don't know. I don't remember when it was during the game because it was so late. But I think Robbie Ashford was in, and Auburn wasn't even in the red zone. And I'm like, this isn't what we've seen.
Oh, there was a few times.
Yeah.
The last drive, he actually started the series.
Yeah.
And then they put then he put Peyton Thorne in. Then Peyton actually got in a rhythm. Then hit Rivaldo Fairweather for the touchdown. Got the PI call that kind of set him up too, and some other good throws there. So yeah, I'm cool. It's around the goal line, in the red zone. It's just I don't know. I want to see a little something different. I want to let your quarterback get some rhythm on there. So let's enough of that boring game that I had to endure because I had to write about it. I really don't know if I would have stayed up and watched all that had I not had to write about it. I'm still not caught up on my sleep. I missed some NFL yesterday because I was so tired and I just passed out at some point during the games. Texas A&M and Miami. This was it was an entertaining game, and we were texting Saturday, and I told you, I said, well, the good news for Texas A&M, the offense has been fixed. The bad news is the defense got worse. They could not stop Miami. Miami rid of it. Look at what Tyler Van Dyke did against them. He was 21 of 30 for 374, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. It was just bad. And then Connor Wigman was not horrible. 31 of 53, he's the quarterback for Texas A&M. 336, 2 touchdowns. He threw 2 interceptions. And Evan Stewart, big game receiving for A&M, 11 catches, 142. But if that's going to be what A&M's defense is going to be this year, they're in trouble. Maybe not necessarily in a few weeks when they play Auburn in the SEC, and Auburn's SEC opener, and A&M's, I believe, too, as well. But, it's funny. We talked about the defense was good last year, but the offense could not get out of the way. Now, could it be the same, or is Miami going to be really good? I think it's a little bit of both.
I think it's just that A&M yet again is having a down year, disappointing everybody that was hyping them up, just like last year. Maybe not as much on the hype, but they were still getting hyped up. Miami, I thought, did a really good job in that game. Tyler Van Dyke had a heck of a game. Obviously, the quarterback comparison there, Van Dyke was the better quarterback, hence the reason Miami was the better team in that game, even with their 500 fans inside Hard Rock Stadium. But, Phillip, I'm starting to think that this really might be the beginning of the end of the Jimbo Fisher era in college. Because you go on the road, you're ranked, Miami's not. You lose to a team that last year wasn't that great. Really wasn't great the year before either. And your coach is still making $75 million over the course of 10 years. Like, you got to do something different because the results are not there to show that his tenure has been worth it. And when they get into SEC play, if their defense plays like that, man, they're going to have trouble. Just like Alabama. If both of those teams' defense plays the way they have, they're both going to be in trouble. More so for A&M, I think, just because I don't think A&M has the offensive firepower to be able to overshadow what their defense is giving up. But credit to Miami, good game by them, but Miami is not back.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes with them. So just kind of blowing through some stuff real quick here. Before we get to Troy, Kansas State, let's look at kind of some other stuff that went down in the SEC in week 2. I'm just going to run through some scores real quickly. I'm sure everybody knows these, but just, for show's sake. Georgia took care of Ball State 45-3. Tennessee kind of a struggle win. That was a little bit closer than they wanted. Beat Austin Peay 30-13. LSU took care of business, bouncing back against while having Florida State, beating Grambling.
Where was this
72.
offense a week ago?
Well, I mean, you're playing Florida State, then you're playing Grambling.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yeah.
Ole Miss came back to beat Tulane. Tulane looked like they outplayed them in the first half, but they came back to win that one. Wake Forest defeated Vanderbilt 36-20. That game had a major rain delay. Kentucky struggled at times with Eastern Kentucky, but they win 28-17. Arkansas defeated Kent State 28-6. Missouri defeated Middle Tennessee 23-19. Florida dominated McNeese 49-7. This was a close one. I didn't really get to see it, but I'll tell you why I got Spectrum. That problem is resolved as of today. Mississippi State defeated Arizona 31-24 in overtime. South Carolina takes care of Furman 47-21. Brandon, any thoughts on any of those blowouts that I just mentioned?
Yeah, like I said a second ago, where was this LSU offense last week? Glad to see it back. You know what? I'm an SEC guy, but I think Arizona just got screwed by the refs, man. And I hate to say it that way, but they did. That fourth down, I thought Arizona's quarterback had gotten the first down. It looked like it in the review. That was a really good game. The tail end of the fourth quarter and overtime was all I caught of it. But, man, it was a great game. Good win for Mississippi State. But I thought Arizona I thought they got done in by the refs. You know what? I thought Arkansas would have put up more on Kent State. Florida obviously get a big win after what happened in Salt Lake City last week at Utah. Georgia, they're just continuing to roll with their little cupcake schedule. I mean, what else is new? Vanderbilt losing, nothing new there either.
Yeah, so there's not much really to talk about that stuff. And kind of other teams we kind of keep our eyes on. Florida State did defeat Southern Miss 66-13. Just continuing that, doing what you got to do. Appalachian State, North Carolina needs to quit scheduling Appalachian State.
Yes.
North Carolina wins this one 40-34. They win in overtime. Once again, North Carolina cannot connect the game with a field goal. Clemson, they beat Charleston Southern 66-17, but that was like a 24-17 football game at halftime. So I was kind of, okay, what's going on here? So that's kind of a look at that too as well. We want to jump into Troy a little bit. before we do get out of here on the college stuff. Ed, look, I picked Troy to lose to Kansas State, but I thought it'd be much closer than what it was. I think Troy had an opportunity toward the end of the first half. They were down 14-0. They get within 14-10. Really felt like they did have some positive momentum going, but then they let the Kansas State score a touchdown right there before halftime, lose that momentum. Then we see what happened, 42-13. I just, Troy knows, I think now, okay, the Sun Belt, that's their goal. They would have loved to win that game. But everything they want to accomplish is still in front of them, win the Sun Belt, get to a really good bowl game. So that's just kind of like where I sit with it.
Yeah, I picked us to win. Why? I don't know. I thought that, we'd go in there and, pull the upset. Look, Kansas State's offense was hard to stop. Troy's defense had a tough time stopping K-State. But I will say offensively, I was kind of disappointed, man. I think there were opportunities left on the field that Troy could have capitalized on. Now, I believe it was Chris Lewis that had two ridiculous one-handed catches. I mean, I know that doesn't really help. One of them was for a touchdown, but look, Kamani Vidal didn't really have the game that he had in week one prior against Stephen F. Austin. But I thought that if Troy could go in there and kind of balance the offense a little bit and confuse Kansas State, they may have a chance. Obviously, that didn't happen. And we got to turn it around against JMU this weekend at home at the Vet. But tough loss. I wish Troy would have won. But, hey, to keep it 14-10 for a little while, props to them, man. But in the end, they just got blown out.
Yeah, they did, and we'll see. And that's the game's going to be on the NFL Network this Saturday night. So if you're a supporter of Troy, go check it out, which me and Brandon are, because we're both students there too. Just kind of throwing that out there. Got to check in on our future alma mater. Real quickly before we get out, we're not going to spend a lot of time because we have hit 32 minutes here on the pod. The NFL on Sunday, first week. First, I'll just say about the Kansas City Chiefs. People are making too big of a deal about them losing. Chris Jones did sign a one-year contract today, so he's back. Travis Kelce went there, and then receivers just were dropping them. I'm not really worried about the Chiefs. They'll be there at the end with a chance to get the Super Bowl. But just kind of looking at everything else here, man, I was surprised what happened with the Bengals against the Browns. Just seeing that score. And Joe Burrow didn't even have 100 yards passing. They just got shellacked by the Browns. Did not see that one coming. Your Jaguars, Brandon is a Jaguars fan. They beat the Colts 31-21. Trevor Lawrence, 241, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Tank Bigsby had a score in that one as well. Surprisingly, the Buccaneers beat the Vikings. Baker Mayfield is always good in his first game with a team. We got to give him that. He finds a way to win in those situations. 49ers blew out the Steelers. That was impressive. Doesn't matter who the quarterback for the Packers is. They're going to beat the Bears regardless. Man, the Dolphins' offense is awesome. I'm just going to say that. I watched that game yesterday. Look out for the Dolphins. Now, we got to watch out for that team on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if they're going to be that good on that side. But you can't judge. Justin Herbert's a really good quarterback. That's a good offense over there with the Chargers. And then Dallas just completely embarrassing the Giants. So that's just kind of like a little quick look through. Anything from Sunday football stand
out? Yeah. Going back to Thursday, like you said, I don't think everybody needs to be overreacting to the Chiefs losing. It's just the first week of the season. And who knows? The Lions may actually turn out to be pretty decent. But again, it's the first week of the season. The Chiefs will be in the playoffs. They'll be in the AFC title contention race. I want to know why the Cincinnati Bengals made Joe Burrow the highest paid player in NFL history, just for him to play like that against Cleveland. I mean,
not a good look. Not a good look.
No, not at all. Hopefully, Cincinnati turns it around in week 2. San Francisco, I was not expecting that kind of a blowout from them over Pittsburgh. And, the Giants are still the Giants. And the Jags looked good, I think. I didn't get to watch it because, regional broadcast, I didn't get it.
Red Zone channel, man. You need to get that Red Zone channel.
NFL. I'm just going to get Sunday ticket, man, or something. I'm going to have to do something. We can thank the NFL for that stupid regional junk they give us. But yeah, Cowboys blowing out the Giants. That was I didn't see that score coming either. And to wrap it up, the Bills and the Jets are fixing to kick off in like 15, 20 minutes. I think the Bills spoil Aaron Rodgers' first game as a Jet.
Yeah, that's how I was going to close picking that game. I'm going to go with the Jets. But
you're an Aaron Rodgers fan.
Well, people ask me, said you're a Packers fan. Do you want Aaron Rodgers to fail in New York? I said no. I hope him all the best, just like with Favre, just like with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he gave the Packers a lot of great years. I mean, I'm not going to be that kind of person. But we're going to get out of here. Try to keep this between 30 and 40 minutes. Brendan, this has been fun. First week of doing this. We will do this again next Monday and at least every Monday through football season. But Brendan, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Eisenman. You can also follow me or find me over on Facebook Live on the 6th Year podcast page every Thursday around in between 6 and 7 Central Time. Most Thursdays anyway. And you can follow all of my written work over at SoFloBulls.com. And if you're a Bama fan going to Tampa for the weekend, you can find me at Raymond James Stadium on Saturday too.
All right, guys, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Please follow, rate, and review. If you leave 4 stars, you are just a straight-up hater. And also, if you leave a review, I will read it on a future edition of the show. Check out the show over at the 4-Star Sports Media Network as well. You can check out my written content over at Last Word on College Football. Check me out on 969 Legend with Dothan Woods Football and over at the Wiregrass Daily News. Now, to go check out Brandon's podcast. You heard him mention it there. The 6th Year. That's the name of it, right? Make sure I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
Go check that out. And we'll be back tomorrow with Taylor Jones from the Auburn Wire. We'll get more into the Auburn Tigers and their narrow 14-10 victory over Cal. Anyway, guys, you have been listening and you've been watching The Phillip Jordan Show.
Thanks for listening to The Phillip Jordan Show. Subscribe to the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch the show over at the Phillip Jordan Media YouTube channel. Got a question or topic idea? Email the show at sportstalkphillipjordan@gmail.com. Join us next time for more great football talk.